say we'll address the press rather than read the press statement.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to a Partnership for National Unity press conference for June 15th, 2023. Allow me to introduce my panel for today. To my right is none other than the leader of the opposition, leader of the People's National Congress Reform, and the chairman of the APNU, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament. To his right is none other than Mr. Vincroy Jordan, Member of Parliament. Today, the leader will address members of the media.
Good morning to the members of the media and all who are listening to this press conference. It would be remiss of me if I do not again thank all the APNU members and supporters for their hard work and commitment in the local government elections. I want to particularly thank also our supporters in the diaspora and give thanks to the AFC for whatever support they have given. We also had support from our social media supporters. Again, we're thankful. All those who prayed and worked for success, we're thankful. And we're thankful for whatever media coverage we would have had. The APNU had many successes in these elections. And more importantly, there are areas that we would have made inroads that Vice President Jack Deo is hiding from. He is seeking to focus only where he wants to focus. But we are analyzing the results and we are seeing clear areas in which the APNU would have made inroads into the PPP strongholds. For instance, the APNU beat the PPP in Platanco, a PPP stronghold. They called for a recount, and in the recount, they were beaten. So this will be a boost for the APNU members and supporters in Region 6. The APNU supported community groups increase their seats. In Tufla Potentia, for example, constituency 5, which is generally won by the PPP, especially with including Sisters Village, was won by the APNU supported community group. APNU picked up an extra seat in Blairmont Gilderland NDC. We increased our votes in Zorgenhoek Blairmont area, which is traditionally a PPP stronghold. We need to underscore that. This is despite the PPP gerrymandering of the boundaries in the area. And they felt that when they add areas that were normally their strongholds to that area, they would have won. Unfortunately for them, we took that area. We maintained our stronghold of Zealous Editon and picked up significant votes in Monchosi, Zizek area, which is also a PPP stronghold. In all our strongholds in Region 5, the PPP was whitewashed. Remember, they had promised to win Belladrum. They had promised to win all of those areas. Well, they were beaten badly there. It should be noted that we regained Buxton Falls, which the PPP won in the 2018 elections. We continue to do the analysis of the results. And what is emerging is that we have increased our votes in the PPP strongholds that we contested. We therefore need to point out that in keeping with our objective, and our objective was to maintain our stronghold and to focus on those PPP areas that we were likely to make some inroads. And in many of them, we did. We will, in our next press conference, focus on Region 6, again, where we made inroads. The foregoing suggests that once we keep focus and do our work, we will beat the PPP in 2025. We also believe, based on what we have seen in Region 5, that with structured work, continuous work, we are likely to take Region 5 for the first time in the next general and regional elections. We will work on that. Having said all of that, we still need a clean voters list and biometrics. These elections showed that the PPP has no moral compass, they have no interest in the rule of law, and they are so corrupt they will do anything to achieve their objectives. In fact, we can contend that one of the characteristics of the 2023 local government election is that the PPP has developed new means of rigging elections. And so we have to watch that carefully. It includes bribery, installation of fear, police harassment of opponents, misuse of taxpayers' money, GCom police collaboration to deprive opponents of the PPP access to polling stations, the misuse of police on election day, and total control of GCom. GCom has now become an openly partisan body. Anybody who related to these elections, you only have to look at the minister's behavior in areas where a few people stood up for right. You could see they based on how they programmed GCom, they were supposed to be able to walk in and do as they like. And in a few cases that didn't happen, but generally they succeeded in controlling GCom. Now, the PPP has turned Guyana into a lawless place. One of the things the local government election would have done was to confirm that the PPP will do anything to get political power and to keep political power. That has serious consequences that we will address. In the circumstance, however, we believe that GCom must be reformed. GCom failed in a number of ways in this last election. For one, they did little or no voter education. And we know why they did that. They did that so that because they believe voter education would have helped the opposition. And if they didn't, the opposition had to be in every meeting speaking to how people must vote, etc. In fact, when you listen to the advertisement that they put out, there was none telling people that you have to vote twice. You have to vote for constituency candidate and for the party of your choice. So they deliberately did not do the kind of voter education that is necessary. Up until now, GCom has failed to hold a press conference, which is unusual. And what is clear is that GCom was giving Jack Dale information even before they give it to the public. GCom is severely compromised. If you look at what was happening, even before there was the confirmation by the ROs, GCom clearly was providing information across the board to the People's Progressive Party so that Jack Dale could rant and rave. GCom, we must recall, failed to deal with all the forgeries and fake signatures in the run-up to the election. That in itself had the election started from a standpoint of being compromised. GCom failed to take responsibility to ensure a free and fair election. The non-taking of action on forgery signaled to the PPP that they could go ahead with their lawlessness. What we need to extract from it is that if the PPP could behave like this in local government election, imagine what they will do at the general and regional elections. GCom was manifestly incompetent. There were many errors in vote tallying and seat allocation. We're not sure whether it's true rigging or intentionally rigging, or it is just the normal incompetence of GCom. In the circumstances, we agree with the EU that there's need for a partial solution. And that there is need for, and I quote, a comprehensive election dispute resolution system to ensure effective and timely remedies throughout all stages of the electoral process. We also wish to note that when we ask for a recount, the GCom was always finding some excuse why we cannot get a recount in the areas. But every recount that the PPP asked for, they got. Fortunately, the results remained the same, and so they were beaten in those areas. It is clear that GCom has to be reformed before the next general elections. We decided that we will go to local government with the flawed list because we felt that we could monitor and manage as best possible those areas that we were running. But all that happened outside of those areas where we were running are clear indication that we cannot go to these elections coming with the present voters list, and we need to get biometrics. I wish to state clearly that for us, this is a victory for democracy. For us, this is a victory for the people of Guyana, including those who would have voted for the PPP. Because when the PPP gets control and domination, they will go after even their own, so that the elite of the party, the favorites in the party, can get wealthy. Now, the fact that the PPP, immediately after losing Georgetown, could begin to rescind the contracts that they gave to people as a bribe for voting tells you the mindset. They don't even have the decency to let these contracts run out so that people feel that, okay, they were genuine. The day after the results, while the results are coming, many of those workers who got contracts, I assume some of them had to promise that they will vote for them. They rescinded those contracts. And that speaks to the nature of the PPP. And we hope that all those who are involved observe and note that there is no interest in there's no interest in their welfare, there's no care for them. All that the PPP is prepared to do is to use them to achieve their political power objectives. And we wish to underscore that these elections were a victory for especially our political workers who did extensive grassroots work. For us in the APNU, we have restored the APNU to a place where it doesn't only depend on social media, etc. We think they are important, but one of the most important elements of elections is grassroots work. It allows us to keep in contact with our people, learn from them, and be guided by them. But above all, these elections are a clear rejection of Barra Jack Deo, Irfan Ali, and the PPP. We say it is a rejection because in many PPP areas, we would assume that the government, with the resources they have, they would have had the capacity to bring out their supporters. They had very low voter turnout, and clearly they were rejected. But most importantly, we should note is the absence of President Irfan Ali. Here was a man talking a lot before the elections he was going on. We haven't heard from him at all because his boss and bully took over and is trying to create a picture that the PPP would have succeeded. But we know for a fact from our intelligence that they believe they have failed. And as a result of that failure, there are a lot of internal tensions and rifts in the PPP. Now, we see all of this as a response of the people to PPP bad governance, to PPP's arrogance, and to PPP corrupt practices. We hail again the consciousness of our people. we have and we continue to analyze the results. We will look for all the areas of shortcomings because as a political organizations, there will be shortcomings. We will analyze those shortcomings, seek to improve them as we strategize to move forward and win the next general and regional elections in Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the floor for questions and of course by the raise of hand, and you will state your media houses. Miss Tamika Garnett.
Good morning, everyone. My question, I have a few questions to start out with the statement that Mr. Norton made. Did he notice that there were errors in seat allocations in some LAAs or constituencies? Can he give a little bit more information specifically to what area he's speaking of? He said he doesn't know if this was through rigging, or can he give a little bit more information as to what he meant by errors in seat allocation and where they took place?
There were
He mentioned that there was the withdrawal of contracts immediately after the elections by the, I don't know that political parties issue contracts, but can he clarify what he means by the withdrawal of contracts? Who were contracts taken away from? What agency took away the contracts? Because I don't know that political party issue contracts. I believe it's supposed to be done by the tender board or a procurement agency. So can he be specific about which contracts were taken away, where they were taken away,
all right.
and what was the agency that took them away?
All right.
I have a few more questions. Go ahead. You can answer those if you want. So go ahead.
First of all, we are going to do a comprehensive report on all the areas in which there were miscalculations, etc. We have done some. They are still at present. We have some recounting going over, etc. So I don't think I should comment on that at this stage. Second thing, they comment that political parties don't issue contracts. I wonder if you recall President Irfan Ali in Berbice saying to them, we're going to give you the contract to clean areas. I can tell you that in East Rheinveld, that in West Rheinveld, they gave contracts to people who they were seeking to bribe. And when they turned up to work yesterday, they were told that there's no work for them. And that is the doing of the PPP. And always remember, the government institutions are controlled by the People's Progressive Party. So that is my response.
On the issue of the seat allocation, do you think it's wise to make such a broad allegation at this point in time if you don't have more information to back it?
We never said we didn't have more information. We said at the end of this process, there's still things being done. We are going to give a report on that. I don't think it is wise for me to get into details when it's inconclusive.
Yeah, but if it's inconclusive, should you have then stated it? Shouldn't you have waited until you had conclusive evidence to say such a damning allegation of possible seat gerrymandering or rigging, as you said yourself? If you don't have conclusive evidence of this.
We have the right, we have conclusive evidence, we said, but we will issue a complete report, and we believe at this stage it is not useful to do what you are suggesting. In fact, I would recommend that investigations be done rather than appearing to be a political pundit.
Okay, on to my next question. Mr. Norton, you noted that there's still issues with the voters list. The ABNO recently lost a second court action pertaining to the voters list. Can you say how you feel about ACNU's loss of that court action pertaining to the local government elections list, and how exactly you are now pushing forward for changes to the election list when we've seen two court actions against the list of elections and both were ruled against the ACNU?
Well, first of all, in the first case, recall that when we filed the case, the PPP postponed the elections. Remember that? To rectify it. Then they rectified, but then the Chief Justice had hold the ruling. So the ruling came very close to the elections. So to make the argument you're making, in my opinion, is not the best way to go. The first case, it was evident that they were wrong. The PPP and the Elections Commission postponed the elections. They then made changes. But don't forget, the ruling, if it had come earlier, would have established that they had violated the law. But with all the manipulations, it came back. In fact, at one point, there was to be a ruling before, and then it was put to virtually a week or 2 weeks before the elections. So look at all of those manipulations, and you will see that the first one had merit. And it is because it had merit, the elections was postponed from March to June. First point. The second one we will address. We do believe that there is still a case, but the time it was done was so close to the local government elections, it did not make sense to find time focusing on that when the elections were going to be held. We don't agree with the ruling, but we took a decision that we thought was expedient to focus on the local government elections, ensure we maintain our strongholds, and after we could look at that, we are going to be addressing this whole question of the voters list. Now, it is instructive for you to note that in the areas where we didn't contest both constituency and PR, and we only had PR, and we didn't focus a lot, the PPP had clean sweeps, which is indicative of the fact of what the kind of election illegalities they became involved in Region 1 particularly. So all of that suggests that there is need for a clean voters list. We are strategizing, and we will approach this issue of a clean voters list and biometrics in the near future.
Thank you. Mr. Kurt Campbell.
Thank you. Kurt Campbell, Newsroom. Mr. Norton, can you confirm that the APNU has requested a recount in Madhya? And can you say what are the reasons for that recount? And in answering the question, can you also sum up the other areas that the APNU has asked for recounts in?
Yes, I know they asked for a recount in Madhya. The truth of the matter is, we were prepared to leave it as is. But when we asked for the recount, the PPP, in every area that they lost by 4 or 5 votes, they asked for a recount. If in Madhya we lost by 1 vote, why shouldn't we ask for a recount? And so we have asked for a recount in that area. Oh.
And can you sum up the other areas that you've asked for recounts in?
I don't know that we have asked for a recount. We attempted to get a recount in Georgetown in one constituency where the numbers were very, very inflated. This is the, I don't remember the number of the constituency, but it involves Lamar Gardens, Bel Air, Newtown, those areas. There are some miraculous numbers there, but we know that GCom was fighting not to give us a recount there. I know for sure those 2 areas. But most of the recounts, as I understand it, were asked for by the PPP in areas that they recognize that we have increased our support, and in areas that they are uncomfortable. Take Platanka. We won by 5, and they asked for a recount. And when the recount occurred, it was established that we won by 5. And then they come up with some stupid concoction that 5 of their people were given tendered ballots. And so it didn't come, which is a lot of garbage. But that's the nature of the people.
All right, thank you. I see the hand of the person from Stabrook News.
Hi, Ms. Norton, Vivius from Starboard News. Can you say exactly why the party opted out of contesting in Wetham? And secondly, sir, what are your thoughts on the tie in Bartica? Would you say the tie represents your party losing ground in that district, given that the BBC would have increased their seats from 3 to 9?
First of all, let me say about Bartica. There is evidence emerging now that in Bartica, the PPP brought persons from out of Bartica and registered them in Bartica. And that allowed them to mind you, in Bartica, they didn't win the constituencies. In Bartica, if I remember, in Bartica, the number, we were running like 5-4, and it is the constituency element that gave them an extra seat. So we have to look at what has happened in Bartica. I think generally one of the things that happened is, though you would have beaten them in the constituency, they managed to have more people voting for them in Bartica, in Mandia, and probably we should have paid more attention to the PR rather than the constituency. And that is something we will look at. We will look at in the future. Now, the PPP might very well end up with the mayorship, etc. But in the circumstance, we did exceptionally well in Bartica, in Madhya, again, against the odds, against people putting thousands of dollars in a red jersey and closing it and giving it to people. In Bartica, the people went in the day before, the week before, and started giving large sums of money to voters in that area. We probably need to have done some more work in Bartica in terms of saying to people, take their money, but don't vote for them. That is one element that would have resulted in that situation. But overall, we are satisfied that our young group in Bartica, the future of Bartica, did their work and were very successful outside of the things that I would have mentioned.
Letter. She asked me letter.
Phone is there.
I can get it. Letter.
What she up to? Oh, Letem. I've explained Letem at least at 4 press conferences before, that the person in Letem vehicle was broken into, and we ended up in a situation where, having asked the time to present it, we weren't allowed it. So I am satisfied that we have answered this question more than once, and there's nothing new to say on it.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis Shubrall.
Mr. Norton, good morning. Sir, could you please provide us with some figures for the PPP strongholds that you said the APU did well in? And the basic your claims.
Go that again. Go that again.
Please provide us with some figures for the PPP strongholds that you said APU did well in. And secondly, based on your claims of bribery at the local elections that were just concluded, how then do you intend to counter this phenomenon going into the next election where we deal with national elections?
I'm not sure I got the question totally. Go it over for me.
Which one, the first or the second?
Both. I didn't get you clear.
Okay, my apology. Yes, my first question is if you can please provide us with some figures for the PPP strongholds that you said you did well in? And secondly, based on your claims of bribery at the local elections, what more can you do to counter that phenomenon going into the national elections, which obviously will be much bigger?
Um, I can ask Vince Roy to answer the first question.
All right, yes. For example, in the Blairmont-Sorgaloop area and in the Monchosi Z-side, for the first time in that area, we have approximately in one of the constituency about 80 votes, which we never had in the past, and in the Blairmont, Gerland NDC, where they gerrymandered the boundaries. We have managed in a new scheme where it is predominantly PPP supporters to also garner over 50 votes within that community. And again, we hadn't that before.
As it relates to bribery and corruption, Dennis, I'm not one to say what we will do on these issues. One of the reasons we had success in the local government election is because we weren't giving out our strategy. We were just going ahead with our strategic approach of ensuring we do as much groundwork as possible. We will deal with the bribery. I can say to you, we have been collecting information, and once we put together all the information, we will approach this question of bribery. We know for sure we're going to expose them to the international community. Many of our people in the diaspora are exposing it, and we will deal with this question of bribery.
Right, thank
May I
you.
also point out that our campaign to tell people to take their money, but don't vote for them, as we've seen in our stronghold, was part of the strategy pre. Remember, you couldn't do anything about it except focus on your supporters and make them conscious of the situation and then go down that road. And I think that strategy to deal with bribery was very, very successful in many areas. That will be one element, but we will develop some new ones as we move forward. Now, I want to bring to your attention some information that was just sent to me. Now, you remember I said to you, we won Platanka. I'm now informed that GCom is currently taking Platanka Assistant Polling Agent Miss Darren Moore to Georgetown to interrogate her about 5 tendered ballots that she knows nothing about. Please note that at Bartica, a PO issued a number of those ballots at the opening of poll, and she was not called to Georgetown. They just sent persons to look for the affected person to get them to vote. Harassment at its best. This is information coming from our field workers. And so that would have illustrated the bias of GCom, the whole approach of GCom. So bribery and corruption are just 2 elements of it.
All right, so I have a question.
I have a follow-up, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mr. Norton, in the world of real politics, where the APNU were to be in office, and would your party seek to induce members to vote for them?
We operate. Go ahead, I thought you were finished.
Yeah, given your access to state resources.
Define induce. I do not see taking millions of taxpayers' money, going at the Otachung Center, paying people 200,000 as inducing. It's bribery. No attempt to use words like inducing. What should happen is that you seek to influence people through the media, through your public meetings, etc. But it is bribery to go to a citizen and offer them money to vote for you. No word like inducement could be used here. May I point out to you, it is corruption. It is illegal for you to say to somebody, you have to vote for me and take out a picture of it and send it to me. And then you will be paid for voting for me. Some of them came out, but it was done on a large scale. And so that cannot be inducement. That is corruption and bribery. Taking 10-day workers and saying to them, you have to go to the polls and you have to vote for us is not inducing. It is coercion. It is dictating what people should do. GCom issuing one statement saying you cannot carry a cell phone. And then by the time the PPP got on to them, you could carry a cell phone. That was clearly an indication that they wanted to have the cell phone so that they could proceed with their corrupt activity. That is not inducing. When we were campaigning in Georgetown, and it was clear we were getting the better of them, they used Chase Green, Tricia, whatever his her name, to attack our people and then charge them. That is not inducing. In Pleasance, they went and picked a confrontation with a young man and then had the police lock him up. Across this country, our workers were harassed by some people in the Guyana police force. And I'd warned before the election, if you have a police commissioner that isn't certified or qualified for the job to earn his keep, he has to use the police force in the interest of the People's Progressive Party. They did that. Going into a community and telling the community, if you vote for me, I can give you the contract to clean the trenches. And then you begin to give them the contract to clean the trenches. And the minute you didn't get what you want, you discontinue the contract. In Pleasance, they had a PPP activist in which the PPP carried in bags of money and they were paying people in the community. That is not inducing. That is bribery and placing Guyana in the category of a lawless society. So the PPP is not only involved in election, in procurement corruption, they are now involved in election corruption openly. Those things cannot be considered inducement. I will choose another word. They are thieves.
Mr. Norton, given your wealth of political experience and so on, as a leader of the party, what do you attribute to the fact that some of your supporters had fallen prey to this alleged bribery and corruption?
The government
that led to a loss of a number of seats and loss of a number of votes and gains by the PPP. What do you attribute to that, as far as you as leader of the party?
The PPP, in a structured way, made policy and other decisions to impoverish our support base. The failure to give proper wage increases caused a lot of people who would have preferred to be decent and not go down that road to end up taking bribe money. The refusal of the PPP to give a living wage has impoverished societies. In many of our communities, including the NDCs, they refuse to put the resources in so that the community could develop and have access. In Region 10, again, impoverishing communities, not giving them what they are entitled to in the budget. All of that would have contributed to weakening or reducing the purchasing power of those. When in a community like Region 10, like Linden, that you give away more than 80% of the contracts to people out of Linden, what money will circulate in Linden? When you do the same thing in Georgetown, when you do the same thing in New Amsterdam, the PPP has an orchestrated plan to impoverish African Guyanese communities, to impoverish Indo-Guyanese and indigenous Guyanese who support the APNU with the whole purpose of making them vulnerable, and then they go and play and utilize their vulnerability. I think we have done a good job of educating them, but many people will tell you that they need to live, and to live, they find themselves in a situation where they are virtually many public servants said to us, you guarantee our support, but we ain't come to no public meeting. We ain't come out there for them to see us because they will fire us. We went to a public meeting in Vryselas, and a Guyanese citizen came out to that meeting. Whoever called them and told them, the minister called to tell her the consequences of her being at a public meeting when she was in her own time, in her private life, exercising the right to choose whichever political party. And I don't understand why anybody will ask a question like that when the reality is before us. The reality is there for them to see. If you travel Regent Street in the nights, you will see the amount of people on the pave sleeping. Now, it's a manifestation of the poverty. Please recall that while we are talking about oil wealth, while we are talking about the fastest growing economy in the world, that is just for a few of the PPP elite friends and family. The people are not benefiting from the oil wealth in Guyana. All of those factors will cause people to compromise themselves. And that is why I've said that the PPP has done one of the worst things to the polity in Guyana. They have introduced high levels of lawlessness, high levels of corruption, high levels of bribery. And so we are now in a position where you wouldn't even know if it is the will of the people, because you are not allowing the people the right to exercise that free will. Additionally, you have made the ballot no longer a secret ballot by coercing people to take out a picture. What we should be focusing is the way the PPP is destroying democracy, is the way the PPP is destroying people's right to choose whichever political party they want to. The way in which the PPP is destroying people's right to access to state resources. The People's Progressive Party is the biggest problem here. And even in the PPP, there are now resistance to Jagdeo's approach of ostracizing those he cannot control. And so this is emerging as a totalitarian society in which Jagdeo and sections of the PPP, they are seeking to control the total lives of people and remove their freedom. That is the reality.
I have a question from Mr. Mark Benchcop, who is for some reason unable to join the Zoom. His first question is, would the APNU PNC call for an audit of all the money spent by the PPP regime to blatantly bribe citizens in order to buy votes?
Yes, we will.
And his second question is, with GCom silent on the official local government elections results, do you view that as a highly suspicious and maybe sinister?
Everything that GCom did from the inception, they have all been sinister. Remember, clear evidence was provided to the police of people forged signatures. Jagdeo apologized for a dead person signing. All of those things were part of this sinister plot. So we know it was sinister.
He is also following up on two things. He says, is it strange that Mr. Ifran Ali, who spoke about a COI into the Mahdia school dorm deadly fire, yet you have not heard another word from him about this COI? What is your take on this?
I wanted us to focus on local government. I didn't plan going outside, now that I'm saying that, but that he asked that question, we will have to follow up. We did issue a press release after demanding a COI. I think what the PPP was trying to do was to get past elections, etc. We give them the benefit of the doubt. We expect a COI to be held, and we expect it should be a credible commission of inquiry and not the farce like they had about the 2020 elections.
And lastly, can you shed some light on the obvious corruption nature of the distribution of the school cash grant, especially a few days prior to local government election?
We have made it clear that the PPP is ridiculous and malicious. Normally, if you're going to give the crash grant for children at school, it would have been given somewhere in July, so that, or early August, depending when school is opening, so that parents can buy the supplies for their children. The PPP took a political decision to bring it forward as another means of bribery. Fortunately, many people took the cash grant and didn't vote for them. Unfortunately, with the levels of poverty in this society, excuse me, people will still need another cash grant to help them to really get the school clothes and things, school supplies, which they need to get.
All right. I see the hand of Mr. Adam Harris.
It's still morning. Good morning, all. Currently, there was a low turnout at the polls, and you say you are analyzing the results of the local government election. Do you believe that the low turnout could skew the final outcome of whatever analysis you conduct?
Yes, it could, but everything has to be done contextually. For instance, local government elections generally have a lower turnout. We have seen some better turnout in Linden, etc., in our strongholds of our supporters. But what we have seen across the board from the People's Progressive Party is extremely low turnout. We know, for instance, that in the Better Hope area, they actually went when they were only about 50 people voted and bully people and threaten them and tell them they got to go out. They did the same in industry. So we have to analyze it in context. While low turnout can be a problem, if you are doing your scientific analysis, you will factor in that in arriving at conclusion. Now, I do not believe that local government election is the best gauge for election. Let me give you an example. The PPP will run out and say, we win 100 NDCs and councils, but the largest block of voters, Georgetown, Region 4, is like 40% of the voting population. So when we win Georgetown, in local government, it will come over as one municipality. But when you look at it as votes, you will see a different story. So we recognize that there is no comparison. The three most populous towns are Linden, Georgetown, and New Amsterdam. That we would have maintained them, it says that we did exceptionally well in the most populous areas. That has implications for general and regional elections. So we have to do it contextually. We can't just look at local government by itself without factoring the variables that will help you to get a proper picture. Somebody saying, oh, they win, PPP win 7 localities and we win 3 municipalities. But when you put the votes there, it's a totally different game you would see. So it has to be done in context. and we must analyze it. And mind you, we're not only analyzing for votes, we're analyzing to see a number of trends like we've seen in places like Region 1, where once the PPP wasn't scrutinized, they took everything, where they weren't properly scrutinized. That speaks a lot about the PPP. So there are many areas we are going to look at in arriving at conclusions about local government. But for us, the biggest takeaway is here you had a man who I believe is going mad, saying we're going to win Linden, we're going to win Georgetown, we're going to win New Amsterdam. They didn't. And then you shift the goalposts to talk about other things. For us, we achieved that strategic objective of ensuring they do not get Linden, Georgetown, and New Amsterdam. And it is not we who set that original objective. It's Barra Jackdo and his pomposity that did it. And we have responded. We have beaten them with all they have done in those areas. Our people are hyped up. We will continue the momentum preparing for the next elections.
Thank you. I see the hand of Ms. Tamika Garnett.
Hi, once again, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, it's still morning. I got signed out earlier, so I'm not sure. I was in the middle of asking a question about the voters list. I think Mr. Norton misunderstood the court cases I was talking about. I was talking about the court case for the general election in 2020, where it was determined that only dead voters could be removed from the list and overseas voters cannot be removed. And the recent court case for local government elections, where the APNU also lost that case, where it was noted that there was nothing that about the list that could prevent the elections from going forward. In the context of those two election cases, exactly how does the APNU intend to proceed forward as it pertains to getting changes to the list of electors outside of constitutional reform? We continue to hear Mr. Norton say there needs to be changes to the list and the list is bloated, and what ways or means does the party have for this disposal to prove this situation and to address it in light of the fact that there were already two court cases that the party already put forward their argument and they lost both of those court cases in the judiciary?
First of all, the second one on local government, I answered already. I'm not so sure if it is I who not clear or you. So I've answered that already. As it relates to the second one, we have said on numerous occasions that the opposition and government can come together and change the law to ensure we can clean the voters list. We have said that many times. And mind you, that doesn't demand constitutional reform. What it demands is us looking at the laws and amending it to ensure that we can have a clean voters list that reflect the reality of the population in Guyana.
But if it's the Constitution that states what gives a person a right as a voter, you're saying it doesn't require constitutional reform. But it's the Constitution that sets out the right of the voters to vote and what can or can't be changed. So how do you expect to go about saying it doesn't require constitutional reform, but you're going to make changes to how the voters can go about creating the voters list?
I don't know if you're aware how this thing happens, but let me say to you, when we talk constitutional reform, there's established a constitutional reform commission. Parliament has already agreed to that. That is to look at the Constitution in its entirety with the aim of making changes to it. What I'm speaking about is that there are laws that can be amended to ensure there are clean voters list. And that can be done at the level of Parliament. It doesn't demand constitutional reform in the wider sense of it. I hope that would have explained to you, my dear, what is.
Can you give an example of which of the laws can be changed?
What do you mean by example of which of the laws to be changed?
You said there are laws that doesn't have to
They are
require constitutional
they are
reform.
in the laws and in the ruling of the Chief Justice certain provisions. We can look at the particular articles in the law and take an amendment. I can't remember offhand which are the articles. You have the whole representation of the People Act on a number of areas, so you'll have to look at it comprehensively. But I don't know that I know.
So the parties haven't looked at the law comprehensively as yet?
Could I say this to you? We have looked at the laws. I'm saying to you, I cannot remember all these laws that I need to cite to say that to you. What I can say to you, that there are laws that can be amended, and our legal people will address it and make proposals for the amendment.
Thank you. I see the hand of
My
Ms.
next question, I have another question, sorry about that.
Would-
I don't know if Mr. Norton would have already addressed this as yet. I'm sorry because again, I was taken out of the meeting.
You weren't.
can
One
Mr.
moment, Miss
Norton-
Garnett. One moment, Miss Garnett. There are quite a few persons who have been bouncing out, hence the reason why I would have read Mr. Mark Benchcop's question and you stating that you were taken out. Please don't. You would have bounced out. Whatever happens, we understand the internet setup and electricity issues. So I don't appreciate you just saying you were taken out.
And it's instrumental that she said taken out,
All right.
not she left.
So I just wanted to make that point before you continue, and we permit you to ask your final question.
Okay, my apologies, I was bumped out of the meeting. So anyway, I'm just saying, I just said that to say that I don't know if this question was asked already, so I don't know if I'm being repetitive. So that is why I preceded my question with that statement. We saw that the PP made inroads, even though they did not win the entire LAA in Georgetown, we saw the PP gain 4 additional seats, particularly in constituency 1 and 4, where we had the mayor and the deputy mayor. We saw they gained an additional seat in Linden, and in Bartica, we saw that they got the popular vote in addition to collecting 9 seats. Can Mr. Norton say how he feels about the PP making inroads in these APNU strongholds?
I have already said, and I hope you were here, that we believe in the context of all that the PPP did, all the illegalities, we did exceptionally well in our strongholds. I've already said that the level of bribery and corruption that were involved, it might not be a true reflection of the reality. I said we will analyze the situation and we will move forward. I don't know why you would mention Miss Green area and what inroads they made. I don't know that they made inroads into the area. A few votes with the kind of money you spend cannot be considered inroads. What it can be considered is some elements of the bribery succeeded while most failed.
Thank you.
Okay, my final, just one last question. Can Mr. Norton say how many LAAs the APNU contested? And I know there were also some small parties where the APNU was asked not to contest in the LAAs so that the small parties can leave. Can you say between the APNU and the other small parties that supported the party, how many LAAs was won by the APNU and the small parties, a total of how many?
You would recognize.
Did you get the majority seat?
You would recognize that in many of those areas, we worked with groups. Many of those groups are still doing the analysis. They don't have the kind of capabilities that the PPP has. And so many of them, we know what they did. We point out to you, one of them that was in was the two flood potential area where we made inroads we are going to give a detailed account of all the areas we would have made inroads to. And at that time, you will be updated.
Thank you. So I see the hand of three other persons who I will take. I will start with Ms. Davina Kaichurnos.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Ms. Chair. I have a few questions for Mr. Norton that is off of his first statement. Can I go ahead, please?
Hold one sec.
I did say at the inception, we wanted to focus on local government. I am prepared to take your message, your questions after this at another time and deal with them. But we want this to focus on local government because we believe that local government is the focus. And for us to deviate into other areas, it will remove what we are trying to do for local government. So we have no problem answering your question, but we want this press conference to stay focused on local government.
Well, sir, you did take a question already from Mr. Benchcop off of your
And I
statement.
did
So
say,
if I may be allowed at least two questions.
I did say at that time, it was already asked, but we will focus on this. And I am prepared to give you an interview if you want by yourself. But politics is a very complex thing. And once we get into other areas, we can very well remove what we are trying to do in terms of establishing the reality of local government elections.
No problem, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Antonio D., Nightly News.
Good afternoon, members of the press, Mr. Norton. I have a question that I would like to you. There has been reports, as you're aware, that the area of industrial peasants, I noticed that you guys amassed 1,745 votes, while it secured 1,775 votes. But when I spoke with the chairman, Mr. Roger, he is claiming that there has been some anomalies. So I wanted to know, I noticed you mentioned that you guys will be counting some areas. So I wanted to know if Pleasance industry respectively is on the cards.
In Pleasance industry, we won most of the constituency. We won 5 out of 9. Having won 5 out of 9, the PPP was able to come into a tie because they had more in terms of the PR. I did say to them that they should seek a recount. I can check to see if they in fact sought a recount, but I'm not aware.
Because I checked the website recently and I noticed it has not been changed. And I spoke to Mr. Rodney yesterday, and he said it appears as if there is an anomaly going on with that area. So I wanted to know if you were aware.
He did bring to my attention there are a number of anomalies. In fact, I had a meeting with them last night, but I will have to get back to them and let us deal with these issues.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should also make the point about Pleasance. You know, Jabdeo is a very, a very good spinner. You should join the West Indies team. They keep saying they win Pleasance. They lost badly in Pleasance.
Right.
But in industry and other areas where their supporters are, that has enabled them to garner the popular vote. But when it came to Pleasance, the PPP was beaten in Pleasance.
All right. I see one moment. One other question from Mr. Benchcop. I think this will be our final question since I don't see any other hands being raised. His question is, what is your take on the videos circulating on social media showing ministers of the PPP walking into polling stations and intimidating election day workers?
Well, if GCom was impartial institution, GCom should have dealt with it. But it is the trend of the People's Progressive Party. I can tell you, I was accredited, and in many areas, at the close of poll in West Rhymeville, the PPP had somebody inside of the polling place who should not have been in the polling place. Throughout these elections, GCom was allowing PPP persons who should not be in the polling place to be in the polling place. In the case of West that I'm talking about, it is only after I insisted and made a lot of noise that the chap that they had from the PPP was asked to leave. But there are many areas where people who should not have been in there were left in there, and they were not only bullying GCom, they were seeking even to bully some of our agents. And so that is the general trend. And like I said, we have to analyze all of these things and come up with clear proposals to deal with them moving forward. As it relates to Indar and Anil, the videos tell the whole story. They do not believe that the Elections Commission is independent. They know it isn't. The only problem they have is that in this era of social media, they are taped and exposed. But that has been the behavior of the PPP across the country, except they arrive in a constituency where we are very strong people and battle with them. That has been their approach all the time. So it has to be dealt with.
Thank you very much. I do not see any other hands. And at this time, I want to thank the members of the media and our viewing audience for joining today's press conference. Do have a wonderful afternoon.